Hello everyone, welcome back to the Undercut. Welcome to the mid-season driver ratings. We're in the summer break. It's time to rank the drivers. This should be exciting, shouldn't it?
It should be. I mean, I'm having withdrawal symptoms from F1 right now.
Yeah, well, this is all we can do. All I'm going to say is, I don't know. We should see a return to the Netherlands for F1 in a few weeks. But until then, we're going to rank the drivers mid-season.
Yeah.
This might cause some arguments, so there might be a few beefy sections of this episode of the Undercut. But without further ado, let's get into this. The way this essentially works is throughout all of the races this season, myself and Jack have been giving all of the drivers a score out of 5, 1 being the absolute worst, and 5 being the best. The occasional 0 was given to a driver that absolutely stunk out the gaff. For example, Kevin Magnussen in Monaco. Why is he doing that? Who knows? So that has been factored in. We've added all the scores up, divided by how many races there are, and now we have our average scores, and we are going to rank them 20th to 1st. And the reason we've done it this way is because it eliminates recency bias, and it gives you a more objective view of the whole season so far, because there are going to be drivers in here that some of you, and Jack maybe as well, and me for Jack's scores, might disagree with. But
yeah,
as I mentioned, it is all in objective fashion to make it as equal and as fair as possible. Because let's be honest, if we did this now, there's certain drivers that would be really low on the list or really high on our lists, when really we've kind of forgot about the start of their season. So let's jump straight into it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. Let's jump straight into this. So 20th, who have you got in 20th place? Who is the worst driver performing this season?
I don't think this is any surprise.
Nope.
Overall this season, it is Logan Sargent.
Yes, I have also gone with Logan Sargent as well in 20th.
You can't, this year, he's either been a 1 or a 2 with the odd 3. Yeah,
in our driver ratings, he's never really got above a 3, maybe on the odd occasion. He's had a decent race, but in our driver ratings, I mean, just this season, he's not had a good race. Good races, good qualities. He's been behind Alex, significantly behind Alex, most of the season, and he's 20th.
He's the worst of the season.
He is. Who have you got in 19th place?
Surprisingly, only just ahead though.
Oh god,
only just.
Okay.
Literally just. Sergio Perez.
I've also gone with Sergio Perez. Perez and Sargent actually got the same score for me. They got both an average of 2.1 out of 5. I've gone with Perez ahead of Sargent because there was a few races at the start of the season where he was on the podium. He looked like he was actually turned his form around from last season. But then once again after Miami, it just dropped off and he's been absolutely woeful since.
Yeah, well, I had Logan at 2.1, same as you, but Perez got 2.2.
Yeah.
So that's all that split. But I would argue as much as saying Perez has been the worst driver over the last 5 races or so. I think Logan's outdone him. But I think that start of the season has saved Perez at the moment.
It has, and we can't forget as well that he's driving a Red Bull.
Yes.
So
I mean, you have to take the car's ability into account. And at the start of the season, that Red Bull was clear fastest. It was clear of the McLaren. It was. It was only really Miami McLaren caught up. Before then, Perez was getting podiums because he had the fastest car. As soon as McLaren caught up, Mercedes caught up, Ferrari caught up, where's Perez now? Sometimes not even breaking top 10.
Yeah. Yep, that's how you know. And I think definitely Perez will be replaced next season. But that's a different topic for a different video. We've made millions of videos on Perez. We could make a million more.
Yeah.
But coming in at 18th, who have you got at 18th?
18th place, I have got Guan Yu Zhou.
Oh, okay. So this is the first time we are different because in 18th place, I've gone with Kevin Magnussen with an average score of 2.4. Tell me why you've gone with Zhou.
Well, I've gone with Zhou purely off the basis. I think Kevin's had just as many bad races as Zhou, but when Kevin has a good race, Kevin has a good race. Zhou hasn't had a good race.
Yeah.
my Zhou scores 2.4 and my Magnussen scores 2.4.
So you got the same
But
score.
they're both the same, and I had to choose who's had the better season off the top of my head visually. And I think Magnussen's had better races than Zhou. I think they've both been shit. But Magnussen, when he's had a good race, it's been a good race. It's been a decent race. And he has had a couple this year.
Yeah.
Imola comes to mind. He had a decent race in Imola. But Zhou just hasn't had a good race. The only good race that I can think from Zhou is maybe Bahrain.
Yeah. So for Magnussen, for me, he's had a few good results, but it's been a disappointing season so far. We think about the crash that he caused in Monaco. We think about Miami. We think about Saudi Arabia as well. He has sort of ironed out those mistakes a little bit this second half, the first half of the season. But then again, he's also being outperformed by Hulkenberg near enough every race. So he's not had the best season. He could turn it around, and I definitely think Magnussen has the capability to do so, but he's definitely one of the worst drivers at the start of the season, I think.
Well, yeah, that's why he's 17th in mine.
And likewise, I've gone with Guan Yu Zhou in 17th with a decimal point higher than Magnussen with 2.5. And I know why you've gone with Magnussen, but I've gone with Zhou in 17th.
Same score, and I had to choose. If you had them at the same score,
I choose Magnussen. Yes, Zhou is ahead of Magnussen though, and I think the reason why is because you alluded to earlier. He did have a few decent races at the start of the season where his race pace was really good, but largely this season Zhou has been let down by his qualifying, and that has obviously gone on to affect his race because the Sauber is just nowhere anyway. So if he can do a Bottas and sometimes get the odd Q2 appearance, maybe we'd be sat here having a conversation of, oh, to be fair, Zhou is outperforming that Sauber even if he hasn't scored any points. But that simply isn't the case.
Yeah, no, it's just not the case. And that's why Bottas is further up, because Bottas is qualifying and he's putting himself in a position sometimes. Like we saw in Belgium, he was running in top 10 at one point.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
So, and Zhou's just never done that.
No.
I mean, the only one that I can think that he might have done that is China, actually.
Yeah, he was. He had a decent race in China.
He had a decent China race, to be fair to him.
But like I said, it's a rare occasion that he does.
Very rare. I mean, China was race 4. I haven't seen it since.
Yeah. 16th. Who have you gone with 16th?
16th. Let me get my list.
Oh, he's got a list.
I've got Lance Stroll.
Okay, so this is interesting. Why have you gone with Lance Stroll?
Well, I think what it is with Lance, he hasn't had a stellar race where he gets a 5. And I think that's what's putting his score down for me. Because I've either got him at a 1, a 2, or a 3. With maybe the odd 4 dotted in there.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, when Lance gets a 4, he deserves a 4. Like, I think Hungary, I gave him a 4.
Yep.
He had a great race in Hungary. But I just get, like, you go back to the start, Saudi, he got a 1. He's had a couple more 1s here and there, like, throughout, if I go through it, which I don't have it up. I don't know, I just think Lance is just riddled with mistakes.
He has been. In 16th, I've gone
China.
with...
That was the one.
China's a big one.
I wanted to give him a 0 in that one.
In 16th, I've gone with Valtteri Bottas with an average score of 2.8, which I think it is above
2.8?
average.
Yeah, I have Bottas at 2.8.
An average is 2.5 if we really take into account out of 5, 2.5 is right down the middle. Bottas is really hard to rate. I have no idea how to rate Bottas. He could be driving the absolute boots off that car, but no one is ever going to know because the car is so shit. And it's absolutely nowhere no matter what happens. The odd occasion we have seen Bottas really outperform and show his talent is in the likes of Hungary, where he managed to eclipse into Q2. And we've seen that a few times
Q3
from
in China.
He got Q3 in China, exactly. We've seen it a few times from Bottas, but it's hard to rate him. So he's 16th for me, unfortunately. This is one that maybe I think if the Sauber had a little bit more pace and we got to see a little bit more of what Bottas is about, possibly he would be higher on this list. But at the moment, he has to go 16th for me.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I'll move this on to 15th, which I have Bottas in 15th at 2.8.
Okay.
So I've got the exact same score as you, but a place
Yep.
higher because
Yep.
Stroll's at 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah, and I completely agree with everything you've just said about Bottas. If we saw a little bit more, in terms of if that stake wasn't that bad, Bottas could be like driving godly.
Yeah, but you'd
that
never know.
stake is like a tractor.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're riddled with pit stop errors at the start as well. That provided great entertainment. But yeah, I just wish that stake wasn't that bad so we could see a bit more from Bottas, because I think Bottas would be higher on this list if it was all right.
I agree. And in 15th place, to also allude to what you said, I've got Lance Stroll in 15th place.
We're thereabouts with each other, right?
We're thereabouts. The only thing for me is I've give Lance Stroll an average score of 2.8 out of 5. You give him a 2.5. So there is quite a significant difference.
There is a gap there.
In our scores. The reason I've got Stroll at a 2.8, 3 decimal points above you, and in 15th place, is because I think the last few races have saved him. The first couple of races, he did not. He did not perform. That Aston was in Formula A, as they call it, the top 10 teams, and Alonso was consistently there. Stroll was nowhere near. He had a woeful start to the season, and this is where recency bias plays a part in it, because a lot of people will say, "Hold on a minute, Stroll's been outperforming Alonso like the last 4 or 5 races." He has, but that's the only reason why he's anywhere, other than the bottom, is because he's actually been doing okay, outperforming Fernando Alonso. But other than that, Lance Stroll has not had a great season so far, I don't think, in my opinion.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think where Lance kind of turned it around a bit.
It was getting towards that Austria point. I think Fernando...
sort of area, wasn't it?
Yeah, Fernando was on a poor run of form, and Stroll sort of picked it up a little bit, scoring a few points here and there, which is what you like to see from Stroll, I think. And if he can continue this, I'm sure by the end of the season, his overall score will go up, and hopefully on this list, he'll be higher.
Yeah, he should move up the list. I mean, my 2.5 is going to be hard to move high up the list, but there's a chance.
There's a chance. Moving on to 14th place. Who have you got in 14th place?
14th place. Ocon.
Esteban Ocon.
Let's
talk about Ocon.
I'm not mad at that. I mean, I've got Ocon here as a 2.9, so almost a 3.
Yeah, so 2.9 out of 5 for Esteban Ocon.
Which, 3, you're having a season where we expect you to be.
Yeah.
Aren't we? And that's what a 3 is. And Ocon just below, and I think fairly so, because this season, don't get me wrong, he's had a few good races, like at the start of the season, with where that Alpine was. He was pulling it through. He was pulling himself up the ranks. Obviously, Saudi was one of them that was a highlight for him.
Yeah.
But it's been riddled with over-aggression, stupidity, just a load of shit.
Yeah,
to be honest, especially when battling Gasly, he needs to stop with this crap of a one-man army, because he's not. And I've just had enough of him.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's that's been a lot of people's criticism of Ocon. I've got a little bit more to say on Ocon later on in the rankings, but that's fair enough. In 14th place, I've got Fernando Alonso with a average score of 2.9. The last few races have let him down. I think he was outperforming that Aston for the majority of the first half of the season. And the scores, if you go back and watch the post-race podcast that we did of those races, clearly show that, because we have rated Alonso for what he's been able to do. But then, because he's dropped behind Stroll, you've got to imagine it also works in the opposite way. Whereas he's outperforming the Aston, and he's outperforming Stroll by quite a margin. We're giving him really good scores. But if he drops below Stroll, the expectation of Alonso is that he's this world-class driver. Therefore, he's getting really poor scores. So it's, for Alonso, it's a mixed bag of a season. And he did turn it around in Belgium, and maybe that's a springboard for the rest of the season. But at the moment, it's literally a half and half for Alonso this season. A half of really good and a half of really bad. So he does sit 14th for me on my driver ratings.
Yeah, and well, I've got Alonso a little further up, but only at a 3. So thereabouts with your score for Alonso for me.
Who have you got in?
Well, I'm going to put all these together, 13th, 12th, and 11th, because I've given them all the same score of 3.
So the baseline grade that we give them.
Yeah, so Ricciardo 13th,
Yep.
Alonso 12th, and Albon 11th.
Okay, so let's just talk about why did you give those drivers 3s?
So Ricciardo's the lowest of the 3 in 13th, purely because of the start of the season that he's had.
Yep.
That start of the season compared to Yuki was being outperformed by Yuki like monumentally.
Yep.
But in saying that, he's grown into the season and he's getting better, and he's thereabouts with Yuki now.
Yeah.
But I think that start of the season has damaged where he is in these ratings. If he carries on like this, at the end of the season, he's probably more than likely going to be higher.
Okay, that's fair enough.
That's why Ricciardo's down there. Alonso 12, I think exact same as you. 50-50 season for him. He's either been really good or really shit.
Yeah.
So that's why he's there. I think he's had just enough over Ricciardo after the start of the season Alonso had, and the start of the season Ricciardo had. So Alonso is just ahead. And then Alex, he's just been bang average, which reflects in the score. He's been literally spot on.
Spot on.
As to where he is, and that's why he's a 3.
He's had a very quiet season, Alex Albon.
Exactly. So he's where I expect him to be. He's the score I expect it to be. And he's just doing what I expect him to do. And it's a 3.
That's fair enough. Alex has had a very quiet season, and I'll talk about Alex a little bit later in my ratings, but that's a very fair assessment. He has had a very quiet season. For me, my 13th place is Pierre Gasly. On an average score of a 3. It seems a little bit harsh, and this is where people will maybe slightly lean towards a bit of recency bias. We have to remember, at the start of the season, Gasly was being outperformed by Ocon, even when that Alpine was nowhere. He is ahead of Ocon in the championship, and that's because of his recent form of scoring points. But Ocon, I think, consistently has been ahead of him at the start of the season, and he's even stuck it with him during this bit of the season as well. So for me, Gasly does have a 3. It's by no means bad.
Wait, have you got Ocon ahead of Gasly?
I have Ocon ahead of Gasly.
Oh mate, no, you're washed.
You gotta just wait. You gotta wait for my Ocon score.
I can't. No.
But this is what's interesting about this is that if I was to do this now after the Belgium Grand Prix, I'd put Gasly ahead of Ocon. But I've averaged out all my scores from the start of the season, and it turns out I rate Ocon more than Gasly over the entire season thus far. So
I still rate Gasly over Ocon over the entire season thus far. I think the only race that I think that Ocon outdid Gasly massively was Saudi, which Gasly didn't really do because he had that issue as well. But what I will say, also at the start of the season, Gasly had the heavier car. Ocon got the upgrades. Gasly didn't.
Yeah, but also
as well.
We'll talk about more about that when I get to Ocon.
I refuse to have Ocon above Gasly. I refuse.
In 12th place, this is also another controversial one. I've got Carlos Sainz. Now many people will go, okay, what are you doing? Carlos Sainz cannot be in 12th. But I went back and I looked at the races where I gave him. I've never given Carlos a 1. I've never given the worst grade. But I went back.
I gave him a 1.
I haven't actually ever given him. You gave him a 1 for Canada.
I never
gave him a 1 in the entire season so far. I went back, however, and I looked at all the races I gave him a 2 or a 3 in comparison to when Leclerc was getting 4s or 5s. and it became clear as to why he's 12th, is because even though he had a really good start to the season, since then, he's consistently been outperformed by Leclerc. He has made a few mistakes here and there. He's been generally the bottom half of Formula A. Consistently, bear in mind, consistently still delivering points. But it's more about the fact he's been outperformed by Leclerc more than anything. And that's what's affected his score. You can only compare a driver to their teammate. And it's a bit harsh for Sainz. But I do genuinely believe... It is, but I do genuinely believe that is the reason why he's so low. Moving on to my...
What I will say is I can guarantee your score of Sainz and then your score up to 6th, there's not going to be much different. There's like 3 decimal points between them.
Yeah, no, there's not much. So
yeah.
Oh, you might have saved me from the rage comments here, because bearing in mind, Sainz is 12th, but there is barely any difference between Sainz in 12th and my 6th place. There's
literally
barely any difference.
The gaps from now to the top now for me, they're all in the 3s.
Yeah, they're minimal. So that's my 12th place. My 11th place with 3.1 out of 5 is Daniel Ricciardo. Now, many people will go, well, Daniel had that poor start to the season. I have this opinion that I think it was less about Daniel being bad and more about Yuki being absolutely insane. I think Daniel was performing where that car is at this the whole season. And I think he has been. And I think it's only recently, as you mentioned.
You think Saudi Arabia was performing where that car was at?
No, of course there are races where of course, let me just, I said on average, right? I'm not saying there hasn't been. I'm not saying there hasn't been a few bad races for Ricciardo. Of course there has been, as there has been for Yuki and most drivers. But I think on average, Daniel's been performing where that car's at. I think it's just been that Yuki is insane. He's been outperforming.
Yuki had an insane start.
He did, and it's only until recently that I think Daniel's sort of got on top of that. And maybe Yuki hasn't had as many insane races as he once did at the start of the season. It's looking more equal now, right? Daniel's getting his footing, so I think it's more about that, and that's why he's got a 3.1. But I think his score has been saved by the fact that he's had a very good second half of the first half of the season. Because if he didn't, then I think we'd be looking at Ricciardo a lot lower on the list. Yeah,
I'm really fuming with you.
Why?
This means you've got Ocon top 10.
Yeah, I've got Ocon top 10.
No. What the fuck are you on? Even you can admit that's fucked.
No, it sounds fucked, but I've gone back, looked through the scores, and yeah, the races that he got good scores from me, he's finished ahead of Gasly, he's out-qualified Gasly, he's scored points, he's outdone him, he's finished however many seconds ahead. He has.
Ocon. Top 10.
He has. You obviously have a bias to Gasly anyway. We know you do, and I like Gasly more. But I'm being as objective as possible. Yeah.
I'm being objective. And Ocon, which I'm telling you now, other than the Ocon fanboys, which you need to get a life if you're an Ocon fanboy, right? Honestly, other than them, everyone can conclusively say Gasly's been the better driver the whole season so far than Ocon. I don't care what you're on about.
I disagree. I really do. Let's move on to your 10th place. Who have you got in 10th?
Gasly.
Okay, so another thing is, whatever you say about Gasly, I'm not going to disagree.
Exactly. Well, I don't think there's anything that needs to say about Gasly because what Gasly went through, I think the thing that's put Gasly, I think he may be a little too high. He's ahead of Ocon. But he may be a little too high. He should be a little further down. But I think what saved him was he went on that race run period of 5s.
Yes, he did, yeah.
And I think that's what's brought him up this high. Because, what was it? Canada was a 5. Spain was a 5.
Yeah.
And he had a couple more 5s in there in this season. And I think that's what's brought him this high up. I think maybe it could be a little lower, but when he's had good races, he's had good races.
He has. Yeah.
And I haven't seen Ocon have a good race.
I disagree with that, but we'll get onto that.
Mate, if Ocon's not even 10th, I'm going to kick off.
In 10th place, I've gone with Oscar Piastri.
What is wrong with your list? Is shit, man.
No. Okay, right. So people will go, Oscar Piastri, what the fuck are you on, mate? Oscar's been one of the best drivers this season.
I'm not mad at your Oscar. I'm mad at Ocon being ahead of Oscar.
Oh, don't worry. You ain't got long to wait. Until I mention Ocon. Piastri's in 10th with an average score of 3.1 out of 5. Now, I've got to preface this, right? I do not at all think Ocon's had a terrible season. But
Piastri.
Piastri has. However, people will jump at me and say he's won a Grand Prix. He's, the last few races, outperformed Lando. He's been thereabouts. He's showed quality, class, and calmness, collectiveness. He's been he's outperformed Norris on the basis of racecraft the last few races. Lando's been making the mistakes. Oscar's kept his head clear. All of this, and people will say that, and I don't disagree. But the start of the season has really let him down, and I don't think people realize how much he was underperforming. Let's take a look back and look at this, right? So the Bahrain Grand Prix, he finished 8th, 12 seconds behind Lando Norris. In Australia, he finished 4th, 30 seconds behind Lando Norris, when Lando Norris was 5 seconds from the win. In Japan, he finished 8th, also behind Fernando Alonso as well, 18 seconds from Lando Norris. In China, he also finished 8th. He finished 43 seconds behind Lando Norris. In Spain, he finished 7th, 31 seconds away from Lando Norris, when Lando was fighting for the win. And that's not to mention Imola. Imola, he did score a podium, so I left that out of my evidence. So I'll let him off there. But then again, Lando also fighting for the win. So Lando is really, really showing Oscar up the first half of this season. And people don't realize, it's only recency bias that people will say, Piastri's had a really good season. If you asked me after the Spanish Grand Prix, no, he's been outperformed by Lando quite convincingly, quite comprehensively. So Piastri's 10th as an overall score, an overall rating for the season. Not just he's had a good few races. Overall, he's 10th, and that's about right. He's about mid pack.
Yeah, and I've got him 9th.
That's fair enough. So we agree, right?
Well, to be fair, I wasn't even contesting your Piastri because I fully agree with it.
Yes.
I fully agree with your Piastri because if you watched our post-race podcast, and if you haven't, go and watch them.
For proof.
Because if you watch the start of them, pretty much every single race, I have shat on Piastri.
Yeah.
I have. Because he wasn't there with Lando. He dropped off. He's too far behind Lando at the start. Now, don't get me wrong. He's corrected it. And I think his main issue at the start of the season was his tyre wear. Keeping them tyres in a working window. And I think he struggled with that at the start of the season. I think he's got on top of it now, which is why we're seeing him where he is now. And don't get me wrong. Past few races, probably put him ahead of Lando.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
But at the start, and that's why this score's so low, it was shocking. He was shocking. Absolutely. But the fact that he's in the form that he is now, there's no way that I don't see him going up this list.
Yeah, no, I don't see anywhere other than up for Oscar. 10th isn't a bad position. It is middle of the park, but I think he will. I think come the end of the season, he will be top 5. Based on an overall score. If he continues this form, I don't see him not being top 5, but we'll see.
Top five might be a push.
It could be a push, but we'll see, won't we? I think people don't realize how far behind Oscar was at the start, and I think
he was really far behind at the start.
And people need to realize. And the thing is, that McLaren was no slouch either. Lando was fighting for wins and fighting for podiums consistently. So, yeah. Okay, so 9th, yes, I've got Esteban Ocon, with an average score of 3.2. Now,
Please, just admit, like, even you with some remote sanity can admit he's too high here. Please,
maybe,
just admit it. Please.
maybe this
Even
is.
I've admitted that Gasly might be a little too high. If I've admitted Gasly's a little too high in 10th, Ocon's like in the moon, mate.
But this is why this is interesting, because you say, oh, admit he's too high. That you personally cannot remember those individual races where you went, yeah, Ocon had a really good race. Yeah, Gasly had a really good race. And then you've since forgot about it because maybe he didn't score points, but he still outperformed where that Alpine should be. You forget about these moments, which is why this average score system allows us to be. Well, this is what I mean. You're forgetting the times where you got to remember Ocon was never far away from Gasly in Canada. You said Gasly had a really good race, so did Ocon. Ocon had a good race in Saudi. Ocon has consistently at the start of the season outperformed Gasly, and he scored. Ocon was the first one to. Ocon was the first driver at Alpine to score points this season. He's qualified higher consistently. This is the sort of
crashed more consistently.
This is the thing about Ocon, though. I think everyone says, oh, he should be lower because we've all got this idea in our head. You know, he's been released from Alpine. Gasly's definitely the number one now. He crashed in Monaco. There's this whole beef. But generally, Ocon has driven a really, really good season. And I think people are underrating it. Yes, Gasly has had a very good patch of races this last 3 or 4 races. And I do not contest that. He's been absolutely amazing. Definitely outdone Ocon. But Ocon has had an amazing run of consistently good races in qualifying, and he's done what he needs to do, and I think people are just overlooking that.
The way I separate the Alpines, Ocon was the better driver from Bahrain to China. They were equal from China to Canada. Gasly's been more superior from Canada to Belgium. Ocon was better in Belgium. If you look at it overall, Gasly's a better driver. Hands down.
Yeah, but that's why we did the point system, so we could determine this.
And my point system's factual. Yours is wrong.
All right, okay. And obviously, there is still some level of subjectivity in there, but like I said, Ocon is only...
Ocon in 9th is woeful.
I mean, he's 2 decimal points away from Gasly.
Ocon in 9th is woeful. That's shocking. I could accept 11th, maybe 12th, but 9th. He's in the top. He's not even 10th. He's firmly in the top 10. He's ahead of Piastri.
I think he's had a very good season. Because Ocon
rinse him. Because no way Ocon should be 9th here.
He's 9th. Who's 8th?
Who's 8th? Carlos Sainz for me.
Like Carlos
down at 12th.
Yeah, but what score have you given him?
We've forgotten about your Carlos in 12th because Ocon's so high.
Yeah, but what score have you given Carlos out of 5?
Carlos
is
a 3.3.
Okay, why have you given him a 3? What was your reasoning for Carlos being up there in 8th?
Well, you talk about drivers who had monumental starts to a season. Carlos was the driver.
He was, absolutely.
Carlos was the driver.
Yeah.
And you can't come at me saying I've been lenient on Carlos because I gave him a 1 in Canada.
No, yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that Charles is better than Carlos as well.
Yeah.
But I think Carlos at the start of the season probably saved him a little bit here. It has.
Yeah.
Because you've got to remember at the start of the season, we were giving him 5s.
Yeah, he was, for me, I think other than Max, he was driver of the season at the start.
Yeah, and we've got to also say, obviously he missed a race as well, so his score is divided by 13, not 14.
Yes.
So that might take into account as to his higher score, and which is why I've got him level with a driver as well, who's in 7th, which is why he's the one in 8th and the other driver's in 7th. Okay,
yeah, that's fair enough. In 8th for me, and by the way, I just want to comment on that Carlos point, actually, real quick. I agree with that. If anything, I am saddened that somehow he's ended up 12th, but the reason I've given the scores that I've given him, I think are completely justified. And if 12th is where he's ended up, it's because the other drivers have outperformed or had better races overall based on where their cars are.
Other than Ocon.
So, 8th, this is the only driver that I completely disagree with given my scores for him. And I definitely think he deserves to be higher. But I did go through and looked at the scores I gave him and figured out why he is in this position. 8th is Nico Hülkenberg with an average score of 3.2 out of 5. This is the only one I completely disagree with on my list, and I definitely think he deserves to be higher. But I went through, I looked at the scores I gave him, and I understand why. The races that have let him down have let him down. Belgium, Bahrain wasn't amazing, and some races he has performed really well, but because him and Magnussen have finished so close together, there's been, I think, 3 or 4 several occasions where they finished 9th and 10th or 10th and 11th. And yeah, Nico pips Magnussen and gets a better score, but he doesn't get a better score enough to the point where he is, getting 5s. He's getting a 4 at most. Magnussen's getting a 3. So it's I figured out why, and on that basis, it makes sense why he's 8th. But
He's
I
not.
also,
He's not.
I also like when you look at it, he's the only one I disagree with on this completely on this list of ratings that I've done over the season.
Well, I would hope that you fully disagree, because in our last video, on our mid-season review video, that came out straight after Belgium, we said Hülkenberg could arguably be our driver of the season, and you fully agreed with that.
Yeah, that's why he's the only driver on this list that I probably fully disagree with, his score being as low as
And
it is.
Ocon.
I don't disagree with Ocon completely.
My.
Let's move on to your 7th place.
7th?
Yeah,
I have Lewis Hamilton.
I do as well. There we go. We agree.
And you see, you fans that are saying we're British bias, we're Hamilton fanboys, we're not.
We put Hamilton quite low down considering
Hamilton's
his
low
recent run
down.
of form.
And he is only the second driver this season, by the way, to have multiple race wins after Max Verstappen. So do one. But the reason why it's that low is because he had a poor start of the year, and George outdid him at the start of the year massively. And that's why he's so low down, because his start of the year was bad. The only time but in saying that, from Spain onwards, he's scored the most points out of everyone.
Yep. Oh, no, I think Max has still scored more.
I don't think from Spain. I think it's from Canada onwards Max has scored more.
Is it?
But
Well, he's up there either way. He's
either first or second, and the most points. So that's why he's probably that low down. If he carries on the form that he's in from Spain, Canada onwards, he's gonna go up this order.
Yeah.
But that's why he's 7th.
Yeah, I agree. And people will say, well, why is he above Piastri and Sainz?
Because he was still beating Piastri.
This is the thing with Lewis Hamilton. Even his... And we also have to take into account, by the way, that Mercedes was nowhere near that McLaren.
Mercedes was, like, sometimes even behind the Aston Martin at the start of the year.
The thing with Lewis Hamilton is that even when he has bad races, they're still decent. That's just Lewis Hamilton things. It just is.
Well, since Canada, he hasn't been outside the top 4.
Yeah. So with Lewis Hamilton, I mean, since the Spanish Grand Prix, Hamilton of old has come out, and he's really been on it. And it's almost kind of like Fernando Alonso. It's a season of 2 halves, except when Hamilton has had bad races, he's still managed to secure something from it, which has saved him from being any lower down. But this last bit of, the first half of the season has been absolutely insane for Lewis Hamilton, winning 2 out of the 3 races.
Podium at Hungary.
Podiums. He's doing absolutely insane. So
the only one that I would say that he's had a bad race at in the last load of races would be Austria, and he still finished fourth there.
Yeah. I mean, he did inherit fourth, but he still had an okay. I mean, I think we gave him a 2, right?
When he has a bad race and it's fourth.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. Even his bad races, he's still finishing 4th, 5th, 6th. Like he's not doing a Perez where he's like outside the top 10. So
or even Carlos down in 7th, 8th. Piastri,
yeah, exactly.
8th.
Yeah.
When Lewis finishes 9th, the car shouldn't be in the top 10.
Well, I mean that's something we'll also allude to with Russell, because I think Russell has also outperformed every ounce of that Mercedes.
Yeah,
as well.
Russell outdid that car at the start of the year.
But so did Hamilton. So we have to give credit where credit's due. So
yeah.
Moving on to 6th. Who have you got in 6th place?
Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I've been waiting for this. I love Yuki.
Why?
No, I've wanted to talk about Yuki this whole video. So.
Why? What's so special about Yuki?
He's just done great, hasn't he? He's had an amazing season.
I am really happy for Yuki.
I am as well.
He's had a great year to him.
Yeah.
Bless him.
Yeah.
And oh my God, the start as well. The start of the season, phenomenal.
Yeah.
The way that he could pick up them points, especially when Aston Martin was still classed as the Formula A category.
Yeah.
And he was still picking up 10th ahead of Stroll, sometimes Alonso.
That's why it made it more impressive, didn't it?
That's what made Yuki's start so impressive, that he was the one picking up points. Him and Hulkenberg were the ones picking up their points there. And that's why he's so high up the list, because of the start that he's had. It's not that he's dropped off. I think it's because he's more like Ricciardo's kind of caught up in a way. I don't know. But
yeah.
Yuki's not had a bad part the second part of the year. It's just at the start of the year he was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was. I completely agree with everything you said. 6th, I've got Charles Leclerc, and I think that's about fair for Charles. He had a blip when Ferrari started dipping in form around the Canada period.
Yeah.
He had a dip in form, but apart from those couple of races, Charles, I think, has been one of the most consistent drivers all season. I've given him an average score of 3.3 out of 5. He had an amazing start to the season despite Carlos. Despite the attention being on Carlos, he didn't finish outside the top 4 until Canada, where he finished. He didn't even finish. Did he finish the race? He was definitely. Well, Ferrari were nowhere in Canada, were they? But yeah, he's had an amazing season. I think definitely something. Definitely an underrated season, that's for sure. And yeah, I think he definitely deserves 6th place.
Oh yeah, no, I think Charles this year, obviously, barring the odd race that was a blip, which isn't him. That was Ferrari.
A lot of the time, yeah.
Like a lot of the time, that's not Charles performing bad. It was the Ferrari car being bad.
Yeah.
And other than that, Charles has consistently been where that Ferrari needs to be, if not picking up podium. Like Belgium picked up that podium, obviously thanks to the Russell disqualification, but he's there. And where's Carlos? Do you know what I mean? Charles had that car on pole in Belgium.
This is why Carlos is down in 12th for me, because Charles consistently outperforming him even when the Ferraris nowhere.
No, I've got no doubt that Charles should be ahead of Carlos, like I've got it, but Carlos 12th is a bit hard.
Well, like I mentioned, it's literally 3 decimal points between them, so it's all to play for in that top 10. But
that's why I got Charles 5th.
And also Hungary's another example as well. Managed to pick up the scraps of the Hamilton Verstappen collision. It must have, it was impressive that he was in the running to do so anyway. Carlos wasn't
so far behind.
Yeah, but he was, he got trapped by the Aston at the start. Shouldn't have qualified as low as he did. It's Charles consistently just putting it in front of Carlos, and I think that's, props to Charles, really. And that's why you've got Charles in 5th.
Yeah. Charles is my 5th.
Fair enough. In 5th, I've got Alexander Albon, with an average score of 3.4 out of 5. This is my wild card This is my wild card.
Wild card. Is that how you're describing it?
Yes, this is how I'm describing it.
Do you know what? No, do you know you are though? You are secretly. You are an Alexander Albon fanboy. You are. Don't hide it anymore. You've just got to own it at this point. You are an Alex Albon fanboy.
I like Alex Albon.
You're an Alex Albon fanboy.
So people will say, well, the thing is, I think people work off memory when it comes to driver ratings. When it comes to ranking the drivers, people work off memory, right? Which is why recency bias is so strong. Because it's fresh in people's mind. The Hamilton win, the Russell win, the Verstappen downfall.
That's why we've decided to do the ratings at the start of the season, isn't it?
Exactly, right? So we don't forget.
Yeah.
Looking back through my ratings for Albon, one thing I noticed about Albon is that every single driver on this list has had 1 or 2, maybe 3, 4 races where they've been stinky, right?
Yeah.
Even Hülkenberg. Albon has consistently, more times than not, been at least where Williams should be, right? Been sort of within that pack of the Formula B, if not right at the front of it. Yeah. Occasionally, I'd say probably a quarter of the time, outperforming that car and even scoring points. And that Williams this year should be absolutely nowhere near points.
Yeah.
Should be nowhere near points. And I think his season has gone under the radar because he never really is talked about. You can't really remember any memorable races where Albon did anything incredible.
No.
But he has finished where he needs to be. He's been available for the points when they've come to him. And that Williams has been absolutely dog shit. If not the second worst car. And also, by the way, I also want to point out some of the overtakes that Albon has made this season.
Yeah. Some of the overtakes have been pretty good.
Some of the racecraft has been absolutely insane. And it's so unfair that he's got such a really bad car because his season has gone so under the radar.
But and his year, it's the average Alex Albon.
That's the thing. It's the average Alex Albon, but he hasn't really had a bad race. I can't think of a bad race for him.
No, I wouldn't say a bad race. I think a bad weekend he had was Australia.
Yes.
Australia was a bad weekend for him.
Yes.
Obviously,
yeah, that's true.
Forcing the team to only race with one car.
Yeah.
Got out-qualified by Logan at Austria.
He did, but he still outraced him.
Yeah, but he still got out-qualified by Logan Sargent.
I think Australia was one of the only times I give him anything other than a 3. But it's been 4s or 5s, if not. So
I've just been giving him 3s the whole...
I know you have. But this is my point about Albon. Like, he's consistently... And maybe there's a bit of Alex Albon bias from myself, but I don't think it's unfair to say that his season has really gone under the radar. And
he's been good, consistently good. He's probably the most consistently good, or one of the most consistently good.
Yeah, and this is why I couldn't say this until now, but this is why I really disagreed with Hülkenberg, because I would put Hülkenberg over Albon.
100%.
But I'd still put Albon in there.
So where's Albon? 5th?
Yeah, 5th. He's 5th. Yeah.
Your list is fucked, bro.
Who is 4th for you?
George Russell.
I also have George Russell with an average score of 3.5.
George Russell with an average score, for me, of 3.5.
So, yeah, I mean, we've both got the same. So
we both matched it. I mean, and I think that score has come from... Like, Lewis is down in 7th for me, but he's 3.3, by the way. So, it's close. Which, I think it's that close because of Lewis's recent form.
Yeah.
Obviously, what was it? Before that... Well, have you seen it? Before that email was sent to Mercedes. Do you remember the email?
Yeah.
George outdid Lewis massively. And it's now swung round and Lewis has outdone George 4-1.
Yeah.
Something like that. But George's start of the year, in the way that he outperformed that Mercedes massively, outperformed it way more than Lewis did. And where that Mercedes car was and what George was doing with it was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And it deservedly deserves the 4. Obviously picked up the win in Austria. And yeah, he's had a good year, George Russell.
Yeah, he has.
Good year. And it does pain me to say because I don't like him. But he's had a good year.
He's had a consistent year. Definitely an improvement from last season.
Yeah.
Last season, I think, was a bit of a dip for Russell. The season before, we saw what he could really do. And then coming into this season, I think it's sort of this season is sort of a continuation from where he left off in 2022. More or less, I'd say. 2023 was definitely a year to forget. This is more of the continuation of the Russell we saw in 22, which is nice to see because you want Russell to fight at the front. Obviously being British and driving a Mercedes, being the successor to Hamilton in that team. So it's good to see him up there. He's had a very consistent season. I think what I have to say about Russell largely applies to what I said about Charles as well. Just generally consistent. So
yeah.
Moving on to third place. Who's your third place?
Hulkenberg.
No, that's more like it for Nico Hulkenberg. So what?
Yeah, I don't even think I need to explain that one. If people don't think that he deserves to be there, then you're deluded. It's just I'm not taking any prisoners at this point. Like honestly, if you know F1 and you watch F1, you know Hulkenberg's that high.
He's been great.
Yeah.
I'm
not even going to explain myself because those who don't know don't deserve an explanation.
Okay, that's fine. I've gone with Yuki Tsunoda, which is actually quite a lot higher than where you got Yuki in your.
I've got Yuki
ratings.
in 6th.
I've got Yuki in
then
third.
What score have you got Yuki?
3.5 out of 5 on average.
Yeah, you see, I've got Yuki at 3.4.
So Yuki for me is like you mentioned. He's been an incredible start to the season. He's had consistent outperforming that RB to the massive extremes. He's made Ricciardo look like a fool sometimes, especially at the start of the season. And it's only recently that Ricciardo sort of grabbed his form back, and maybe he's even outperforming the car as well a little bit now. But Yuki he's had amazing. And the thing is, it's not like Sainz where he had a great start to the season, then he's kind of dropped off and maybe been outperformed by his teammate. No, Yuki is consistently. He had a great start to the season, but he's still doing bits now. Like every weekend, he's still. It's like 9th is his favorite position. He finishes 9th like almost every race. It's really funny. But yeah,
what was it the other year, or one of the years? Yuki was finishing 11th every race.
Yeah, I think it was last season, wasn't it?
That must have been so annoying for him.
Yeah, he was like if 11th got points, he'd be so much further up in the championship.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's had a fantastic season. He definitely deserves to be third, I think.
Yeah. Well, he deserves to be up there, and I think 6 maybe slightly too harsh. But when you look at the top 5 that I've got of Leclerc, George, maybe he pips Leclerc, but I think the others, you can see why they're ahead of him. So
yeah,
it's close. It's all very close.
And I think we both know who we've got for second and first. Lando Norris in second, and first is obviously Max Verstappen.
Yes. Should we talk about Lando? Because
yes,
people are going to say, why is Lando that high up?
This is the Piastri effect again.
This is the Piastri effect. I mean, obviously, recency bias. Other than Hungary, which Lando would deserve to win Hungary as well, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to say that one before you get in there. But obviously, got outdone in Belgium massively by Piastri.
Yeah, 100%.
But recency bias would dictate Piastri ahead of Lando, wouldn't it?
Yes, of course it would.
More than likely. I mean, although in saying that, no, it wouldn't. What are people on? Because where has Piastri actually come from? Obviously, he won Hungary, but Lando was just as deserving winner.
Yeah.
The only race that Piastri's outdone Lando massively is Belgium. Lando outdid him in Britain. Lando outdid him in Austria. Max took him out. Other than that, Lando was miles ahead of Oscar. Lando outdid him in Spain. Outdid him in Canada. Oscar's only had one race.
This is the recency bias, because obviously he's a very likable guy, and everyone's on the Oscar Piastri hype train.
Yeah.
And Norris, and there's this narrative being painted by Norris on social media by F1 fans that he's sort of bottling the championship, and to an extent, we'll talk about that when we get onto Verstappen.
Yeah.
But so there is an element of that, but at the same time, Austria wasn't his fault. I mean, to be fair to Piastri got screwed over by the strategy in Britain, but Norris was still ahead of him.
Yeah.
In Hungary, Norris extended that gap after the pit stops, even though Piastri had fresher tyres.
Yeah.
Should have won that race. Lando deserved to win. Like you said, Belgium's the only race where comfortably Piastri's outdone him. So I 100% agree. But there's this narrative being pushed that, and Belgium did not help this either, but there's this narrative being pushed that Lando is sort of bottling it, the championship.
Well, he's bottling the wins.
And it's making Piastri look better.
Yeah.
But realistically, Norris has had a better season. And if you don't think so, then unsubscribe to the channel and fucking leave. Because that is ridiculous. If you think that Piastri's had a better season than Norris, that's unbelievable. No.
Subscribers just get halved now.
Yeah! No, but it's true! If you think Piastri's had a better season than Norris, you're so deluded. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is really stupid. And you need a brain scan if you think that.
Exactly. Get the MRI, man. Just fucking.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lando.
I'm not taking any prisoners for this video. I don't care.
What have you given Lando out of 5? What's your average score?
3.7.
Me too, and I think that's because it would be closer to a 4 out of 5, but most of the times he's got given a 4 because he hasn't won the race.
Yeah, that's the thing. He needs to start winning these races that he's there to win. And
he might overtake Max in this sort of form chart that we've got going on here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've only got Max at a 3.9.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've got Max at a 4, so very, very close. But the reason... I mean, we say the reason he's so low, he's freaking first. And only a full point.
Yeah, but
off,
there's not like a... Like, we would have been saying, like, after Japan, Max is going to be, like, fucking 4.8 or something.
Yeah, and I think there's been a few races that have let him down. It's not only the Red Bull form which has sort of affected him, but it was his outburst in Hungary, the collision with Hamilton, his qualifying in Monaco. If he didn't hit the wall, that was his fault. He knew that lap was crucial.
Yeah.
It's just little niggly mistakes like that which has put him...
These mistakes are creeping in now, aren't they?
They are, but somehow Max is still... extended his championship lead at every race somehow.
Yeah, I think that's because it's so close now. The pack, there's no like clear person who's going to be where.
No, exactly.
So that is helping Max in that regard.
But we are seeing. I mean, the first half of the season it's been insane for Max. But the last few races, we've seen the old Max sort of creep back in. But we can't take.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, the mistakes, the crashes, but you can't take anything away from him. He's had an insane season.
Yeah, he's obviously one of them that's up there for driver of the season so far.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd still personally put him behind Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, you can't take anything away from him. He's still first, and he's first on merit because he's had good races, and he's won 7 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And he has had races where you would have thought, oh, maybe he doesn't fully deserve to win that one. Imola, Canada.
And he's still done it. Spain, potentially. Yeah. He almost won Great Britain as well. Almost. Close. He was so close. Another lap. And
I don't know if there's another lap. I think he caught up that much that lap because Lewis backed off to keep it clean.
Maybe, I don't know, but he was close.
But Max he put himself in the position where within 5 laps, he could have got him easy.
Belgium, if he didn't have the penalty, he was off down the road and gone easily.
Yeah. So he's had a good year, but these mistakes are creeping in, and these mistakes are being punished by us because they need to be.
Yeah, but it just shows how good of a driver he is, because even though we've been grading him on those mistakes, he's still 3 decimal points clear of second place for me. So
2.
Well, 3 for me, but 2 for you. But either way, that is it for our driver ratings. Obviously, a few controversial ones in there, but obviously, all in the spirit of being objective over the entire season. We will continue to rate the drivers race by race, 1 to 5. So make sure to catch the post-race podcasts when they do come out. And by the end of the season, we will come back to these lists, review, compare, and see where these drivers are. Any final thoughts?
Call them the list is fucked.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Piastri's going to be higher, probably. That's my final thought.
Piastri will be higher. Ocon will definitely be lower on your list.
I agree. I think he will.
I refuse to accept him being top 10 come the end. I refuse that. Sainz probably go a bit higher, maybe.
Yeah.
Hamilton, I think, will go higher.
Albon will drop.
Albon will drop. Hulkenberg, hopefully.
Doesn't.
I've
got a controversial one. I think Tsunoda will drop.
I think Yuki may drop.
Ever so slightly.
Well, I think he might still be top 10, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, easily top 10. Easily.
Yeah, I think we might get a bit more of an overall picture at the end. Obviously, these mid-season ones is a bit like they're only halfway through, aren't we?
Well, that's it. You know, like I've got Sainz in 12th, but it's mid-season. I've got Ocon in 9th, but it's mid-season.
Like, we've got another 10 races.
Exactly. I've got Piastri in 10th, but it's mid-season. So
we added these up after Britain, didn't we? And these scores have changed in the past 2-3 races.
We did a little bit of a preview,
just a little bit of a
tester.
Look, didn't we? Yeah.
I want to point out, by the way, when we did this in Britain, Sainz was like 4 places higher.
Yeah.
So I think it was his score in Hungary. It was in score in Hungary and Belgium, which has dropped him.
But it's not just his score; it's other drivers' score that have put him ahead of him.
Like for example, Piastri got a 5 ahead of Sainz. Ricciardo has had a few good races ahead of Sainz. Ocon, I don't know how he's got there.
I knew it.
No, but it's just what the math says. Don't argue with the math. Don't
knew it.
Don't argue with
maths.
Don't argue with
my whole high school career, and I'll carry on doing it.
Don't argue the maths, brother. Right. We'll see you in a bit. Next time for Tuesday's video, we'll be covering. No, we won't. Thursday's video, we'll be covering Mercedes-Benz.